Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Triangulation is brought to you by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Triangulation, episode 27, recorded November 24th, 2010. Gary Vaynerchuk. This episode of Triangulation is brought to you by Audible.com, the internet's leading provider of audiobooks with more than 75,000 downloadable titles across all types of literature, including fiction, nonfiction, and periodicals. For a free audiobook of your choice, go to audiblepodcast.com/triangulation. Hey, welcome to Triangulation, episode 27. I'm Tom Merritt. As you can see, I'm sitting in the chair Leo usually sits in. He's out on vacation. And so we're going to rerun an episode that we recorded before Triangulation officially became a show. So it isn't really called Triangulation. We got to sit down in November with Gary Vaynerchuk, entrepreneur, host of Wine Library TV, author. Really interesting guy, very inspiring. You want to know about social stuff, you want to hear what Gary Vaynerchuk has to say. He is the master of using social media. Now, a few things to know. We did record this back in November. So at the time, his book Crush It was out. He's got a new book out called The Thank You Economy. So that brings us to our sponsor, Audible.com, the leaders in audiobooks, makers of over 75,000 downloadable titles across all genres, fiction, nonfiction, and in this case, Gary Vaynerchuk. You could get his book absolutely free at Audible.com. Just go to Audible.com and use the code Triangulation when you check out. You'll get a free copy of any audiobook you want, but I'm just saying, hey, you want to check out Gary's book. It's a good one, The Thank You Economy. That's Audible.com at audiblepodcast.com, Triangulation. I just said a code, but you actually got to go to the URL, audiblepodcast.com/triangulation, and we thank them for their support of Triangulation. Other thing to know about this interview with Gary Vaynerchuk is that we're going to talk a lot about Wine Library TV. He hit his 1,000th episode back in March, and he no longer does this show. So we talk about it like it's a current affair, because he was still doing it at the time. But do realize if you go, you're not going to find any current episodes you might be excited about when you hear him talk about it. But it's going to be a fun conversation. Let's get right to it. Gary Vaynerchuk.
It's time for, I guess we'll call it Triangulation. Tom Merritt and I talking to a fascinating person in the tech industry, and today, a guy, you know, you'd almost say who is overexposed. There's nowhere you can go without hearing and reading about Gary V these days. In fact, in our chat room, if you swear, we'll turn the bad word into the word Vaynerchuk.
To make it something nice.
Yeah. Gary in 2006 took his little tiny, his parents' liquor company and wine company, a $4 million company, and created WineLibrary.com, Wine Library TV, and took it into the big time. He's obviously a marketer and a businessman with extreme prowess, but also an expert on social media, and I think just a fun guy to talk to.
Apparently wants to buy the Jets.
Well, let's find out about that. Gary Vaynerchuk.
If you love giggles.
Grins. The gags and laughs come fast and furious.
I didn't think I liked fun until I was introduced.
To the Old Vines Inn from Medusa, Lake County, Illinois.
A Chicago wine.
It's a fine Chicago wine.
This is whitepinestudio.com is where we get
White Pine Studio made the glasses. All right.
Glasses.
I'm gonna
Cheers
try to remember
John at the John M. Olson.
Thank you,
who made
John.
these for us. Yeah. In Vining, Minnesota.
Very nice. Appropriately enough.
And you know what? That's a good wine, I think. That's quite a good wine. So I thought Beaujolais was the big Turkey Day wine. You know.
Beaujolais is a huge wine this time of year. Obviously, the Beaujolais Nouveau just came out. You know, I stopped by the store. I was in Manhattan, and I'm actually at my parents' house where I spent my high school years in Hunterdon County, so I have to pass Wine Library, this shop. So I stopped in, and people are just loading up on the Beaujolais. You know, it comes out this week. It's got the first, it's one of the first wines to have the new year on it. People get excited about it. But you know what? The explosion of Southern Hemisphere wines, Leo, have kind of taken a little of the luster out, because the Southern Hemisphere wines have had 2010 on their labels for 3 months now, right? Because they're kind of 6 months ahead on growing season.
Oh,
really? So back in the day when this was the first wine from Europe, it'd be the first time you'd see like the year you're living in on a wine label, and there was that whole romance. But the emergence of Australia and New Zealand over the last 15 to 20 years has taken a lot of the luster out of the Beaujolais.
That's very interesting. I had never thought of that.
Yeah, I'm full of facts.
Beaujolais Nouveau's never been a great wine, but I guess you could kind of taste it and say, oh, well, this is going to be a good year or something like that.
Yeah, no question. And I think, it's a festive way to bring in the year.
Yeah.
Festive is the right word.
Yeah, Festivus. But I
didn't buy any Beaujolais. I did buy some Zin.
Zin's good for. I think I agree with Gary. It's such a rich. Usually you think of it as like something with a steak, though, something like really meaty and rich.
Well, you know what it is? It's very fruit driven, right? So it goes well with, as juicy as, I love how people are like, no, my mom or my grandma makes a really juicy turkey. I mean, the bottom line is it's a dry bird.
It's a dry bird, yeah.
It's a dry bird.
Yeah.
And so big fruit wines like Zins are really a good play in this scenario.
I bought a claret, too, but only because I'd never actually had one before.
Oh, but you have. Claret is just a term for like Bordeaux blend.
Is that all it is? Okay.
Every Bordeaux you've ever had is a claret.
Okay.
And like a lot of California Meritage is claret. So
this says it's a blend of
have.
Cab
you
and
have.
Merlot.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Nice.
Do you have a...
So what I've never had is something that used the word claret on the label.
Exactly, Nate. It's like, it's never been, you've never been tricked before.
Right.
Tom?
Now I finally,
never been
I've finally fallen for it.
You've never been tricked before.
Yeah. So we should start this. Yeah. Gary Vaynerchuk is with us from his parents' house.
Nice molding.
Yeah. Now you and your brother very active in the in new media and so forth. Was there something that happened in your family that made the two of you the way you are?
I got to tell you, it's funny. I mean, Leo, what's crazy for me is that, I mean, every time, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. And also, I'm going to hustle here. I need to get you on my Sirius radio show. I started doing that. I've reached out a couple times. I know you're busier than heck.
No, we started talking about it, and I apologize. Yes, absolutely. Love to.
I'd love to have you on because I'll be very honest with you. I think there's nobody better in the business of doing it than you, and it'd be a real honor to have you on. So
thank you.
That's
Deal.
Thanks. So no, you know what's crazy, and that's why every time I'm on this show, and especially with you, it means so much because I'm unlike a lot of people that watch the show. I didn't grow up with you or the tech scene. I'm a late comer to the game. I'm a businessman and I'm an entrepreneur, but I wasn't a super teched out kind of guy. I only, I did launch WineLibrary.com in 1997, so I was very early in that way, right? Yeah. That is early for that.
But that was just selling wine.
That was retail selling wine. I wouldn't say I was into the geek culture or tech.
Yeah,
I wasn't. I just had intuition that the web was going to be very important, and I needed to launch this because it was going to be my second and third and fourth location. I understood that the internet was going to have reach.
Wine was one of the first things I bought online. The Christmas of 1996, I bought all my presents online, which meant a lot of people got books from Amazon. My grandma got a JCPenney gift certificate. And I bought wine.
From the old wine.com?
And no, it was pre-wine.com.
Wine.com, remember that? Yeah, didn't. Yeah.
It was something that became wine.com. What was it called before?
Wine Shopper.
Maybe that was it. I can't remember for sure.
Or Virtual Vineyards.
Virtual Vineyards. That was it.
That was the first one.
That was the one I bought from. Yeah.
So anyway, I did that, and then in 2000, I started convincing my dad that I needed to hire a full-time developer, which to my dad was the most insane thing that a liquor store in the world could do. That's literally like if the three of us were hanging out right now and I told you that I needed aliens to punch me in my face, right? He couldn't wrap his head around what the heck I was talking about. Finally, I convinced him that that was the way to go, and I hired a wonderful guy by the name of Eric Kastner, at Kastner, Kastner. Everybody listening right now on Twitter, if you want to give him a shout out, he was very influential. Leo, he was like, you need to listen to this guy Leo, and you need to read Jason Kotke and the Neil Dash guy. And he was, he sat right next to me. We were a very small wine shop back then. I was starting to build the business, and he sat literally right next to me. And on his first day at work in 2001, he was like, why did you just search that wine on Yahoo? Check out Google. And I'm like, well, this page sucks. It's a white blank page. They'll never make money. It's like, it's one of those great things, but you just start, I'm sitting next to him and I'm watching him click things like waxy.org links.
Oh, yeah, Waxy, yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. And I started paying attention. You know, I'm not a great writer, even though I signed this big book deal. So I kind of saw blogging, but I kind of let it go because I knew I couldn't communicate well through that. But we saw YouTube very early on, and I'm like, wait a minute. I kind of feel like maybe I can do video. And then it was really the summer of 04 and 05. It was when Zay Frank really started blowing up. And I was like, okay, there's something really here that I think I can do. I remember my developer, now I had 3 developers, they were like, well, you could never do something like this. I got very competitive. And I just started learning. You know, I started learning who Kevin Rose was, who you were, who all these names were. I listened, I learned, I put my head down. You know, I guess at this point in our little culture, I'm very known for how hard I'm willing to work. So I worked really hard. I learned a lot. And then, you know, I kind of went out there, and in February of 2006, I started Wine Library TV. And my brother AJ, who's 11 years younger than me, you know, was along the ride on all this stuff. And, you know, we read the tech crunches. I mean, you know, I read, I learned. Leo, as you know, famously, the first tech thing I ever did was a Leo Laporte Jaiku meetup in San Francisco.
Jaiku meetup, nice.
I flew out. I mean, and here's how I was. Here's how I.
That was a great event. You know, it was kind of neat. Yes, because Gary was very behind the scenes. You just served wine.
I was the help.
You served wine. Yeah.
I was the help. And you know what? I think that's a big lesson for anybody listening who's an entrepreneur. At this point, Leo, I'd built at this point, we were a $40 million business. I was pretty proud of myself. You know, like I built a big business, but I knew that I was a non-entity. And instead of coming to the tech world and being like, oh, you guys are all, let me tell you what I know, I knew my role. I was, you know, a newcomer to the space. And I just sent out wine. I stood in the corner and I poured wine, and I just, I was the help.
Yeah, and it's funny because you know, I found out later that you were there, but I don't think I. Here's video from that event. There's Merlin Mann, Robert Scoble was there, and I wonder. There's Scott Bourne. There I am. There's Jerry from Jaiku. Yeah, Yuri. And I'm wondering. Look now. See if you can see Gary pouring the wine, because you were very unassuming. You're over there to the left. I don't know if we're going to get over there. There's Tara, who put the thing together. And
this is the first of a grand tradition, Gary, of you being at social media events and giving away wine, though, right?
Gary, you're still there? Did we lose him? Oh, we lost him. I'll call him right back.
Because I know at South by Southwest, that was the big buzz at one point, is Gary's opening wine and giving it away at such and such bar. Get over there quick.
Last time I was at South by.
He's got 100 bottles.
Yeah. I'm looking for him. I'm trying to find him. He's in the. Wait, let's go back here. Wait a minute. Was that him in the corner there? There's there
right. Is that him?
I think so.
We need the telestrator, so we can.
I think that might be Gary right there. Is that you, Gary, in the corner?
I'm trying to see. I mean, I'm like. It's a little blurry for me. I mean, I think that's why I got knocked off.
It's a little blurry for all of us.
About my parents' internet.
No, that's fine.
So you have video from this event. This is amazing.
This is the event. I'll send you this.
I need to see this. Yeah, send this to me. I got to see it.
It's on YouTube. Just search for YouTube Jaiku Leo Laporte, something like that. I think Dane shot this video as we're walking around. There's Merlin. And I think you were in the corner. Weren't you in the back there, or were you in the side? There's Veronica.
Oh, I remember that.
There's Nicole.
Look at this. All these people. I didn't, you know, I mean, this was so early for me that I didn't even know all these people, you know? Like
maybe that's you in the back there.
Somebody with a terms of use shirt.
You know where it was, Leo?
Where?
When you first walk in.
That's right there. That was you right there.
Looks like a ginger.
I mean, listen, that's that's what you had to do, right? I mean, when you want to accomplish something.
That was very smart of you, Gary. You're brilliant.
So
and self-effacing, and I think that you make a really good point. You were bigger than anybody in that building, probably, but you kind of took a back seat, and I think that I'm not saying
and that's funny. In this day and age, I don't think a lot of people realize I have the ability to take a back seat, right? I mean, I have a big, over-the-top personality,
right?
But at the same token, yeah, I mean, you just have to know your place, and I was appreciative to be there. It was fun, and I'm thrilled you guys are having me on the show. I appreciate it. And I want to wish everybody who's watching a tremendous Thanksgiving.
So I started by asking if your family was an influence on you and AJ, but your dad was in the wine business. This is your dad's business originally, right?
Yeah, my dad was in the liquor business. I mean, we were very much, it was really a liquor store, Leo. And I was the one that kind of brought the wine culture at some level. And so we were called Shoppers Discount Liquors back then. And so we changed the name. But my dad and my mom are huge. You know, as you may know, I wasn't born in America. I'm an immigrant. You know, so they're a huge influence on me in life.
You were born in Belarus? Is that right?
Belarus.
Or what was then part of the Soviet Union, Belarus?
Correct. But, you know, now, I mean, the tech stuff just kind of happened. You know, it became a nature of where the world was going. I didn't want to be on the wrong side of history, and I put my head down and I learned it. So I'm, you know, all my contemporaries, all my friends in this space, they all have, you know, whenever we get together at the South Bys or the Loebs or, you know, all the conferences we run into each other, Leo, there's always that time at dinner when people start talking about their first computer and like the good old days, you know, like remember when you got the Apple II? And I'm always like, oh man, here we go. I'm like, hey, remember Sega Genesis? You know, I mean, like I just, you know, I can't bring it like everybody else. You know?
Just start bringing up old wines.
Seriously.
Yeah, I'm like, did you guys have the 82 Lafite? I mean, I'm just stuck in that.
The reason they're doing that, they're terrified you're going to bring up wines, and they're going to feel much more left out when you start talking about wines than you ever could when they start talking about their old computers.
So Leo, go ahead.
I was going to say you're going to be at Loeb in a couple of weeks.
I am. Are you going to go to that ever? I don't think I've seen you there. Have you gone?
First time this time I'm going to be there.
Leo's speaking.
Oh, great. Yes, I am speaking.
Yeah. And I'm speaking. We're both speaking. What are you talking about, Gary?
Well, last year I made fun of Loic for not having enough Q&A, so my entire keynote is Q&A.
I love it.
That's great.
That's all people really want.
That's actually the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Don't you guys agree? I mean, that's really what's happened with my keynotes. You know, everybody knows my spiel. I want people to work hard. I think there's opportunity. I am on a new little riff. I have a new book coming out in March called The Thank You Economy.
I like that.
I'll tell you what I'm fascinated by and what it's about, and I'll probably riff on that at the keynote as well. I'm blown away by the context of relationships that are being formed and what they mean for business. You know, so to me, it's really interesting to understand what's happening when we engage in the social web and how that changes our relationships.
Did you freeze up? Okay.
Yes, he did.
It's a thing these days.
Fix this.
All the fashionable parents' houses have
the
them.
Smoke detector's ringing again. I can hear it, but I don't know where it is. Where is it? It's over there.
You just
Harry.
need a 9-volt.
No, Harry, it's ringing. The smoke detector. Go fix it. I can't hear it. What are you talking about?
Be careful, Leo. My parents are only 55.
They're my age.
You know?
No,
so,
come on.
So be careful.
Come on.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the firstborn, and my parents were 20 when they had me, and, you know, my mom's 55, my dad's 57, so they're young. It's just that they live in the middle of absolutely nowhere.
They're my age.
Yeah, Leo, I mean, you know.
I'm 54.
They're young. They're young, man.
I could be your dad, Gary.
Leo, I've always known.
I am your father.
I've always felt it.
I'm your father, Gary.
Gary, I'm your father.
I'm your father.
Hugging this escort.
Now, you were just getting going on something really interesting there, Gary, about social relationships and business. So if you can remember where you were.
Economy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, here's what I think is neat. Us three right now have a different relationship forever, strictly based on what's been going on for the last 15 minutes.
Right.
And I think about that stuff
That's
a lot.
That's a good point. Boy, that's true.
I mean, it's just true, right?
Yeah.
You know, and Leo, I really felt it for us the last time I was on Twit. I don't know. I felt like that was, you know, we really got in deep, and it was just a good conversation. I felt like really great. I was like, wow, I feel like, you know, Leo and I know each other better now. You know, I felt, I don't know if you recall that, but for me, it was cool.
Very well. I do very well. It was Net at Night with Amber, and absolutely had that experience where it really got some insight into you. You said some really interesting, inspirational things. That's kind of interesting because it's true, because we're in different parts of the country. And we're talking about stuff people don't really talk about usually on mainstream media.
No, and what's interesting to me is that when somebody says, hey, you know, after this, I mean, this is the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. I'm at my parents' house, right? We're going to finish this up, and I'm going to go spend time with my family. But because I'm so engaged in the world, and listen, I don't want to take away from family time, but they're all going to go to sleep. And I'm probably going to go to search.twitter and search every single person that says that they thought I did a good job, or I never heard of you, Gary B, before, and I thought you were good, or I think you're a douchebag because that thing you said about being more competitive and better than everybody. And I'm going to engage with everybody because that's just kind of what comes to me naturally. It's what I like. It's why I think I'm so in love with this community. And every one of those people, after this conversation, and I are going to have some form of a different relationship, right? I'm going to click them. I'm going to look at their homepage. I'm going to read a blog post. I find that stuff extremely fascinating. And I think we are in a place where brands are able to have that very similar relationship. We as people do, but so do the Nikes and the Pepsis of the world. And I'm on this mission to do for bigger businesses what I did for Wine Library, which is, to be very honest with you, I just think we outcare most wine companies, and that's why we have a lot of success. And that was going on pre-internet, Web 2.0, social media. And now that I've learned this world, we're layering these factors and platforms and applications on top of it. I mean, today there was 4 employees at Wine Library calling customers, thanking them for their business and just wishing them a happy Thanksgiving with no like second shoot a drop with an offer. I'm very into the humanization of business. I think that's starting to happen. I think companies like Zappos got a lot of credit for it, and I'm hoping in 5 years that, or 10 years, that most companies make Zappos' effort look terrible.
Well, and that's really a different thing about the internet that it enables, right? Is the ability that in the old days, big company got some fan letters, and everyone assumed that they got tons and tons of letters, celebrities or whatever. Frankly, they probably didn't get more than they could handle, but they knew they didn't have to respond. Read the letter, set it aside, maybe log it to kind of see what the trends were, but that's it. Yeah, maybe send a form letter back, something like that. I remember I wrote to Bazooka Joe when I was a kid, and I got a form letter back that didn't even acknowledge anything about what I had sent them.
What you said, yeah.
And so now we have this ability where
let me ask you a question, Tom. Do you remember how you felt when that happened? Were you disappointed? And don't bullcrap me for the sake of pandering to me. I'm just curious.
It was interesting. I was excited that I got written back to at first, and that lasted about a day. And I kept look, they wrote back, and then it like dawned on me after reading it over and over for a day. They didn't say crap. Wait a minute, they didn't say anything.
Aren't you asking an awful lot of a cartoon character, though? I mean, you know, this is one of the things I wonder when you say this. I agree with you, Gary. This is the future, etc. But I don't know if it scales. How does UPS relate to its people?
But it's so much easier. Look at Comcast Cares, right? Like the ability to just kind of quickly respond means.
But that worked with a small group on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Leo, I think you're right. And I think that's the debate that I'm like going, you know, AJ and I with VaynerMedia, we go into these companies. Here's how it scales, in my opinion, through human beings. And that's what's so funny to me about the whole thing right now is that in this space, right, like all my friends that have these big startups and, you know, are really successful, everybody in tech wants to know how things scale. And I think that makes a ton of sense. And it's probably because everybody in the space is smarter than I am. But I got to tell you, it scales. See, it doesn't scale for Gary Vaynerchuk or Leo, right, Leo? Because nobody can tweet on your behalf or Facebook status update, whatever the way you communicate, email, text. I've never let anybody do any of this engaging for me because at the end of the day, if I'm doing it, back to Tom's point, it's got to be me, right? It can't be.
But very few people have your energy, Gary. How do you, I mean?
Fair. And I don't think it scales for human beings. I think it scales for human beings with effort. I think effort is massively underrated and intent is very underrated in our space. I miss a lot of tweets these days because, you know, knock on wood, you get more popular, more people want to talk to you. But anytime somebody calls me out and says, you don't care anymore, there's 100 people that reply before even I get in there saying he just responded to me. So effort's underrated. On the flip side, on the business end, which is a lot of what I talk about on Thank You Economy, it surely scales for WineLibrary.com because guess what? I can hire 40 people behind that logo to engage with every single person that wanted it. And I truly believe that the math of it all works out. I actually think it's less expensive to hire a human being who's passionate about your brand to engage long term than sending out that form letter to Tom that a stamp cost 47 cents or whatever a stamp is now. And so the way it scales is through human beings. The problem is all the bright people, the people in our world, don't think of human beings as a scalable commodity. And all the other people in the world who've maybe done things with human beings, you know, don't understand really what's going on. You look at a company like Groupon that's on the lips of a lot of people in our world, Leo and Tom, they're winning because they have a crap load of human beings that are calling and doing in the trenches, you know, small business outreach, you know, and I'm very fascinated what happens when you layer human beings on top of these scalable products.
Well, and maybe going big is not the thing to do. Maybe the thing to do is to be human scale and not try to take over the world, but to,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's not going to work for UPS, but it could work for a lot of us.
If you're a human being and people know that, they realize that you can't respond to every single thing that everybody says. But when it's important, you will be able to, and that'll make a difference, and that'll come through. I really do believe it.
I believe that too, and as a human that tries to do it a whole lot, and probably way more than 99% even out there.
You do. Nobody could keep up with you, Gary.
Well, I appreciate that, Leo. I'm gonna take that quote.
I know. Nobody can keep up
with
it.
I like it. I mean, there's a whole thing that I think people forget. It's like, you know, my parents gave me the DNA. I like people more than most people. I just really have not met a lot of people who like people.
See, that's the big advantage you have over me.
Yeah, I don't like people either. Right.
But it's true, Tom. I mean, like, listen, there's a lot of people out there. It blew my mind when all these people, I started meeting them that were big followed on Twitter early on in 06, 07, right? And a lot of them I'd meet at conferences. I was stunned how much they didn't like people. I'm like, wait a minute. This is like, you know, I knew that long term they couldn't really, quote unquote, win because it wasn't what they liked. And there's a very different thing between humans and brands. Leo, I think brands can scale. I think 75 people can man the Nike social accounts and start scaling the engagement. Listen, we're doing it. At VaynerMedia, we do community management with the thought of handing it off to the brands, show them best practice.
Yeah.
And we're keeping up with the volume of comments. I mean, we built the NHL from 5,000 to 500,000 followers on Twitter with no dollars, no suggested user list, strictly by talking to people about hockey, and it meant something.
Right.
And not Canadians?
Yeah.
And a lot of Canadians, Tom, tons.
But no, the Canadians are easy. You just say hockey, and they're in love with you.
Careful. I thought that too. The Canadians are not easy. The Canadians are very mad at the NHL because they're not supporting enough. You know, they were actually the hard ones. They were more knowledgeable. And they were pretty much angry because, you know, obviously Winnipeg is gone and, Quebec is gone. So
what I want to know is how do you get those banks of people that have been assigned this to actually care? Because the difference is you running Wine Library TV, you absolutely care. And so when you reach out, it shows. But when you hire somebody and bring them in, how do you engender that kind of same feeling? They didn't start it. They don't run it.
That's a great point. And I'll tell you what the interesting thing is. I think it has to do with the demo of the working with the young kids and the younger people that are coming into this world. A lot of them want work-life balance. And the idea of working 9 to 5 and being a good guy about a company that conceivably they're interested in is a very I've been blown away by how many people are just downright giddy about doing it. AJ said something very funny to me. My brother said he had to fill in for the Brisk account. He told me how much fun it was. And of course, again, it's his business with VaynerMedia, so I get it. But I'll tell you this, Tom, the job is this. Be nice and do awesome things and actually care about the people. And there's a lot of people who find that as a fascinating job, especially if they're somewhat passionate about the brand. So the brands like Nike, Apple, you know, whatever, a sports team, they're going to have an advantage maybe over a cement company because there's some fans already out there that's a dream job. I can tell you right now that if I wasn't so passionate to own them and I didn't have that kind of entrepreneurial DNA, the idea of sitting on Twitter or Facebook and spending 50 hours a week talking about the New York Jets and getting paid for it is pretty darn interesting to me.
That'd be your dream. Your dream company.
No?
But I think that also says something about a successful company in the internet era is it might have to be a company that you can get fans, that you can get people to care about. That if you really want to succeed, maybe it's not merely that you have people who, you know, doing this for you, but you have to be a company that people want to do it for, that they do care about.
Absolutely right. Guys, I think you guys know this, and you guys know this better than I do because you knew it earlier and you watched this whole world evolve, and I caught it kind of early on in social, but it's all been the same game. You got to be better. You just have to be a better person. There's so much being a better person DNA in this space. People want, you know, charity and doing the right thing. I don't think companies are going to be able to push down their message down the throat of the consumer in 20 years the way they used to. And listen, you heard me correctly. I said 20 years. You know, I'm not one of these guys that like tomorrow the world has changed, right? Like, oh my God, everything's different. But if you're not seeing a slow evolution in this space of what's really happening, which is that there's a humanization of brands, you know, that brands are actually able to have relationships with consumers and that consumers have a bigger voice collectively than they have ever had. And more importantly, let me paint you this picture, and this is why it's important. I was going to see The Social Network a few months ago now, I guess, right? And there was a guy in line, and one of the things I do, Tom, Leo, I don't know if you guys do this, but I'm snooping and trying to understand trends. So whenever anybody whips out a phone, I want to see if they're pulling up an app or texting. I'm just very curious about people's, to me, this is all cultural, right? Anyway, this guy tweeted, and this guy was a 50 to 60-year-old man. I'm going to demo him. He takes out his phone. He pulls up TweetDeck. I saw the yellow and black. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So that got me really engaged. I look over his shoulder, and he tweets, "What movie should I see?"
Wow.
Right? 5 minutes later, he goes and he says to his wife, he actually had a hearing aid, but I don't think he was that old, but he had a hearing aid, and so he was loud. He says to his wife, "We're going to see The Social Network. Everybody says it's the best." And I sat there, and I turned to my wife, and I go, this guy is not 20 years old. This guy just used his social graph to make a economical financial decision. I'm like, Liz, this is where the world's going. Yeah. I mean, this is, it wasn't Siskel and Ebert. It wasn't Rotten Tomatoes. It was the people that mattered to him. Now, that is a big deal, and it's going to impact business in a big way. What I find fascinating is that business can be part of that conversation. For example, Lipton, Brisk, iced tea is an account of ours. Not only are we responding to all the app Brisk and questions around our brand, but this isn't Pepsi or Coke, so we're not getting that kind of volume. We know that they're trying to hit the hip-hop demo and things of that nature, and so we are actually debating the best rapper of all time with people, and it blows my mind of how people feel like they have a relationship with a logo like the NHL, like a Wine Library logo, like a Brisk. That, Leo, and Tom, that to me is very fascinating. And if brands are smart and are willing to be authentic, and 99% of them won't be, 99 won't be, but the 1% of brands that recognize what's happening here and realize they got to be a good neighbor and they have to be a good person, and if they just do the right thing, the secondary opportunity to sell to that community is going to be there. Those people are going to have very big victories in the new world we're living in.
Now, you're speaking to your audience, which and the business that you do. I mean, you tried it first with your own business and it worked, and now you're pitching it with your brother AJ and VaynerMedia. But do you get a little pushback from geeks who say, "Hey, this isn't about selling stuff. This isn't about brand.
We want genuineness."
Yeah, you're perverting what we're doing here. This isn't you're making this a commercial enterprise.
Yeah. No, listen, and I got it a little bit from Marshall Fitzpatrick, who's awesome. I'm a big fan, and we have a nice relationship.
Read right web.
Yes.
Yeah.
When he said something about, I made a video about Facebook Places and deals and how this was going to be a big factor in back in the power of the retailer and how are brands going to get into the attention and check-in and coupons. And he said, it's so much bigger than that, Gary. Why are you just making it about sales? And Leo, no question, Tom, but guys, I'm focusing on a very narrow part of it, right? I mean, I'm speaking about something extremely narrow. There are so many bigger implications to what's going on. I just happen to be a businessman. I understand those impacts, and I feel like I'll be honest with you, I feel like I've been seduced by the geek culture to be a better person and a better businessman, and I'm trying to bring that sensibility into Pepsi and Coke, and well, not Pepsi and Coke, but the big businesses of the world.
One of them will win.
One of them win. But I think I'm trying to bring that sensibility. Listen, I'm not going to be the guy that's going to make them go into social or the web. They're there already, right? I'm hoping I'm the guy who can tell them how to be a better neighbor and do it properly and really understand the impact of actually having a soul and giving a. So I don't think I'm going in there and dirtying up the waters. I think if anything, I'm hoping that I'm cleaning up the waters. Because
you're bringing a much better message. I agree.
I'm trying to bring a better sensibility. And you know what? They listen to me more so than they're going to listen to a social media expert because I speak business, right? I'm not there to be Mother Teresa. I'm not there to say, hey, let's rock climb and drink tea. This is about business. But guess what? The way you do business is by being a better business person and being a better, bring more value. I mean, Nike can answer questions in the social web because they have expertise of building these apparel. They shouldn't just be saying, hey, buy this apparel.
I think what we're seeing is the fact that with more communication and more information going around and more people talking to each other, there's less chance to hide behind mistakes. There's less chance to hide, we don't really have to pay attention to those people who are complaining because they won't make a difference. They will make a difference now. And you have to be not just a better person like you're talking about, you have to be genuine. You have to actually care about what it is you're doing. I think this applies not just to companies, but actually to employees as well. In other words, you have to put people in a place that they actually like.
Tom, you know what's crazy? And you have to have great sensibility. I mean, Leo, you must live through this your whole life. I mean, there's trolls out there. There's people trying to get your attention, and that's the thing. I mean, let's not get naive. I mean, I'll give you an example. Campbell's is a client. This is a multi-billion-dollar international company. When one person says something negative on their Facebook wall, the whole company comes to a halt.
You bet.
And I'm laughing. I'm like, guys, but Tom, I'll be honest with you. I think that's wrong too, because I mean, listen, they need to be listened to, but there's a lot of learnings going on, right?
This is something, though. This is a lesson you got to tell these companies. Okay, you're going to be in public, but the Queen of England on Facebook, really good example. I don't know if the Queen of England should be on Facebook. I guess if she's a company, she should be, according to the Gospel of Gary. But the minute the Queen of England goes on Facebook, a bunch of anti-monarchists come on and say, "Screw you, Liz." So what do you tell companies? What do you say when that happens?
You need to live in reality, Leo. Like, I mean, if you're going to put yourself out there, and listen, by the way, yes, in the school of Gary, I do think businesses should be out in the social web. On the flip side, if they're not, I could care less. I mean, and I really mean that. I mean, you've got to do, in my opinion, it's a necessity. This is where the world is.
Everybody is a brand. The Queen is a brand.
Well, it's not the Queen on Facebook. It's the monarchy on Facebook.
The monarchy is a brand.
And that's exactly why they're there, right?
Yes.
They're there to fight those anti-monarchists.
Yes.
But guess what? If you put yourself out there, you've got to. I mean, listen.
You're going to face it,
Leo. You think I get excited when Dvorak takes shots at me on this platform about my? I get sad because I really like him and I need to meet him so he can like me a little bit more.
And this is another thing, and I've said, I called you the Billy Mays of wine.
Yes.
And I'm sure you heard that. And I thought afterwards, oh, God, I hope Gary doesn't take that wrong. I don't mean that in a bad way in any way.
I know who you guys are, and I also have obnoxiously thick skin because you guys know I put myself out there.
You have to.
But listen, I mean, you have to be self-aware. I have very hyper DNA, right? I'm just a hyper character. And so when somebody says I'm the Billy Mays of wine, or I'm also very rah-rah because I'm a sports guy.
Right.
So if somebody says I'm the Tony Robbins of wine, right? Do I get upset? Of course I do, because I think that people associate that with me being full of shit. And I think that anybody that really knows me knows that I go very far the other way.
Right.
But for me not to be aware of why that's happening would be naive and closed-minded.
It's a caricature. And caricatures always say, the big nose, the big chin, I'm not a crook. That's what caricature does. It doesn't mean that's who you are.
And you know what? And that's why it comes with that. And at the same token, you get upset, but you don't, because you know the people behind them and you know they're good people too. And I mean,
after I said it, I thought, oh God, I hope Gary doesn't take that the wrong way. I didn't mean that in a bad way by any means.
Listen, I wouldn't be here on a family night with you if I didn't feel very warm towards you, because don't forget, I'm on the East Coast, so it's 7:53. So
Thank you, Gary.
I didn't take it, but at the same token, it's kind of like a joke has its meaning. I also know that it's conjuring up that image, and I get it. And by the way, Leo,
feedback.
Tom, I think there's probably a lot to the reason why I work so hard to get into meeting people one-on-one, because I'm probably extremely self-aware of how I can come across if people don't really know who I am, especially. If we're going to sit here and analyze it, I'm sure that's why it happens, because I know how different and you guys probably know a lot of people that probably know me even better than I know you guys, right? And I think
everybody loves Gary Vaynerchuk. Everybody does. Who knows
behind the scenes? Because behind the scenes, I just want to come through for people. I know I'm running a marathon. I am running a marathon. I know that this is a long game. And I just want to be a good human being, because I know we live in a very transparent world.
But you showed me something right here, which is that you are a little bit sensitive, that you do take it to heart. I mean, I say I have the skin of a rhino. Well, we don't really. We listen to that. We hear that, and it hurts a little bit.
You know what we are, Leo? We're contradictions. I'll give you what I am. I listen to everything everybody says, and I don't listen to a word anybody says.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. Yeah. I'm sensitive to everything anybody says, but deep down, or not deep down, equally, I don't give a shit about what anybody says, right? It's these equal powerful forces at play. So, yeah, I mean, listen, especially when you respect somebody, right? So, like, when it's somebody like you and I respect to the moon comes in, you take that more powerful, right.
But at the same token, back to the contradiction, I'm going to see a tweet after this video from somebody I never heard of, and it's probably going to hurt just as much, even though I have zero respect or built up equity for that person, because any person that follows me any person that engages with me, I'm blown away that people like me and care and watch my wine show and watch my business videos and buy my wine books and business books and go to my keynotes or engage with me. I will never take the screaming lunatic or Drew or any of these people I engage with ever for granted, because
you and Drew have a little thing. Is there a little thing going on with you and Drew?
No. I mean, I'm massively blown away that people care.
You know, you said something great, Gary, which is you go the extra mile to tell people who you are, that what that drives you to, and I think maybe that's the lesson for the Queen and any other corporation, is that just means you need to work all the harder, because when people do know who you are, you know, I'm sure even Hitler had his fans. You know,
obviously he did. Sorry, I mean, I think we just Godwin's lawed the whole episode.
It's much easier to hate somebody you don't know. When you know somebody and realize who they are, it's much more difficult. And I think that might be really the bottom line on social media entirely.
And that's what helps gets rid of the trolls, right? I mean, there's a difference between user engagement, social media, and being at the mercy of people. I think a lot of people have that misimpression. You don't just listen, you interpret what's said, and then you decide what you're going to do with your business or your blog or whatever it is you're doing. You don't just like you say, it's easy to get like brought down by that one person who's like, you're a jerk, you don't know what you're talking about. But if you reach out to them and you say, hey, you know what, I'm sorry you feel that way, what can I do better, then suddenly you've started a conversation. Half of them won't respond, but the other half will and say, oh, you know what, I was having a bad day. Here's what I really think. And then you create a productive relationship that gives you feedback. It doesn't mean you have to play to that person, but it gives you some more information to go, okay, this tells me a little bit more about how I come across.
I'll never forget when I first heard the term "don't feed the trolls," right? A lot of people, as my career kind of got going and people started, I started getting 500 comments per every Wine Library TV episode. People said, don't feed the trolls. And I just remember driving one day and saying, why? I'm like, I'm going to feed the fuck out of the trolls, and so like, listen, maybe it's because I've got a lot of people in my family with different personalities, and I know that trolls, are maybe insecure and need a little more love, or it could be a million different dynamics, or maybe, hey, how about this? How about maybe you were wrong? I always say to people oh, they're just getting you because you're out there, they want your attention. I'm like, well, maybe I did something wrong, or maybe I was wrong, or I mean, I think people, I don't know, I'm a very into human kind of guy, and I like to run business that way. It's why Wine Library was so successful, because I just outcared. I mean, we just cared more. We just did. I mean, yes, we had great prices, selection. I'm a good businessman. But you know what? When somebody calls and says FedEx screwed up and delivered to the wrong house and our Christmas party is going to be ruined, and I throw a case of wine in my car and drive 4 hours to take care of a $300 order, it sets the tone in my business. And those are the kind of things I did. And that's the kind of stuff I believe in this space. And so the new book, The Thank You Economy, tries to take that soul and heart and apply it to a real practical, scalable, like, can really businesses do this? I have some case studies, and I'm really proud of it. I actually think it's so much better in content than Crush It, and I believe very much in content is king. I think it's why you two guys are so relevant, and I'm excited because I'm a great marketer, and if the content is king, as good as I think it is on this one, with the marketing engine that I think I bring to the table, because I've always said content is king, but marketing is the queen. I think you need them. I mean, there's just, it's part of the equation, like a good wine claret, Tom, needs to be balanced. I think I have a lot of natural ability in marketing, that if this content is as good as I think it is, and some of the early people that have given me feedback is, then I think I got a real shot to make an impact with this book.
What's something that you have no interest in?
Confrontation.
Well, I'm thinking of a business, because
mean people. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's my Playmate interview.
What's a business that doesn't interest you? An occupation that's just. What I'm getting at is.
It's good. You're doing a good job here, Tom. Because I'm always, I get asked. I've been interviewed like 1 billion times in my life. This is a fairly interesting. What doesn't interest me in business? Because there's definitely something. I'm trying to think. I'll tell you this, and this is a funny answer. I'm intuitional and DNA wise not very good, and this is funny, I don't love scalable businesses all that much. I don't like easy. And maybe it's because of my, immigrant background, but there's businesses like, I don't like the idea of building a website, SEOing it, I very much understand right now how to build a one-off website, SEO and Facebook ad it out properly, have them land and convert them better and just use the math to make a lot of money. You know, that to me is very non-interesting because I think it's a very cold business.
It's like an Amway kind of model, isn't it?
And I'm not talking about being like really spammy. I'm even talking about, you know, yes, I mean, the amount of internet marketing, like, you know, bullshit that's out there is disgusting. But I'm even saying like, you know, like really tangible, like a nice business. Like I resell bracelets and I'm not trying to scam anybody. I have a nice price on it. And I figured out how to buy, how to SEO or buy Google ads or buy ads to bring in lead gen at a lower cost than I exit because I convert enough and here's the profit margin, something that's systematical. And there's a lot of people that love that kind of business.
Let me rephrase it. You're not interested in just making a living.
I'm not interested in what, pal?
Just making a living. Because that's all that would be. That'd be making a buck.
That's a good Tom, I'm fascinated with connecting with people and leveraging the fact that I'm a good dude and have done I love cashing in chips late. You know, any business that lets me do that, I love the idea of doing everything right, stepping up for people, and then hoping that that one time when I know I need a move, saying, "Hey, can I get a hand here? Can you promote this, or can you help me on that?" You know what's funny? On the most global scale, I actually think that's what I'm going to do with the New York Jets. If I fall short in buying the Jets,
are you actually trying to buy the Jets?
Leo, I'm going to buy the Jets.
Well, I hadn't heard this. Are you putting together a consortium? What are you doing?
Yeah, you know, somewhere 5 years ago, I realized, oh, cool, I don't have to buy them outright just by myself.
No,
right?
nobody buys a team by themselves anymore. That's so old hat.
Yeah, so, you know, I first time I had dinner with Mark Zuckerberg, I'm like, Zucks, I need $300 million for you to put on the side for when we buy the Jets.
He could buy the Jets, totally.
Like he can.
Is he a Jets fan?
You know, I think he's a Giants fan,
really?
you know, which really bothers me. But anyway, I mean, I think the funny thing is this, that
you can change him.
I want to buy, I think I can. I want to buy the Jets, and I have this secret, deep, dark, you know, like move that I'm going to have so many relationships that I'm going to get everybody to donate $2, and that's going to put me over the edge and get them.
How much would the Jets cost?
So here's the funny thing. Some of my hardest core fans think I'm in a position to buy them like soon, which I'm very much not. If I bought them today, I'd probably have to pay close to $1 billion, right? I'd like to buy the Jets in 30 years. 30 years would be a good, you know, kind of a number for me. I'd be 65. By the way, you're watching something right now. That Jets jersey in a frame.
Yeah.
You see that little thing?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something really intense for me. Speaking about family, when we moved to Edison, New Jersey, every kid in the neighborhood was a Jets fan. That's how I became a Jets fan. I barely spoke English. We didn't have a whole lot of money, and all of them had Jets jerseys. And I asked my mom if I could get a Jets jersey, but we couldn't afford it. So she made me that jersey.
No kidding.
My God.
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
And so that is literally, as you can see, it's framed. It's Leo, it's a deep thing. It's my most prized possession. I mean, behind this jersey, there's 1 million pieces of memorabilia that are worth all sorts of money. That right there, and it has a number 5 on the back of it, which is my favorite number. And Gary, it's the most prized possession in my life.
It's knitted?
I have it in, it's knitted. And it literally, that thing right there is the most, outside of my family, human family, you know, members and the people I call friends, that is the most prized possession I have in my life.
Wow.
It represents so much of where we came from, right? Like if, you know, I'm not joking. I really think I can pull it off. So for me to end up buying that team, and that jersey was made because we couldn't even afford a $20 jersey, that would be a really cool full circle story.
No kidding. If I didn't already want you to buy the Jets because I know you're such a huge fan and you're a good guy, that would put it way over the top for me right there. I want to buy the Jets now.
Yeah. We all want you to buy the Jets, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think I may use this clip for that $2 donation site.
Kickstarter, right?
Right.
Yeah. Gary, you're great. Every time I talk to you, I get excited. I get turned on, stimulated, fascinating guy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it quite like that. It's kind of like a TSA examination.
Hey, let me ask you guys a question, because I probably need to run because my dad's
probably home right now. Yes, we're going to let you go. That's right.
Of course.
I want to do a quick fire of like kind of like the State of the Union, like maybe, I appreciate the time, but I know the people that watch this. Let's talk for like maybe 5 minutes about like the things that are going on. Like I'm completely excited and interested in if Facebook scale can get people to humanly, because I'm always into the culture of it, humanly start checking in. I actually think this whole Facebook Places deals thing has been tremendous for Scavenger, Gowalla, and Foursquare.
Yeah, but obviously has, yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, they're all dead. I'm like,
no, Foursquare had more signups than they've ever had before.
So but that was when they kind of were there. I'm talking about now that the deals thing is layered on. There's been a lot of chatter.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the real interesting debate that I think people should be thinking about. How is that going to impact the Groupons of the world? Because a lot of the business in those deal of the day sites is very local.
Right.
I find it very interesting that now I take out my phone when I get dropped off in a neighborhood in New York City and look to check in and just look to see which businesses locally have something going on. And so I think that's quite fascinating. I think there's going to be a lot of local battles. Like I was talking to this kid on my Sirius show about the University of Maine, and I said, is there a pizza shop that dominates? And he's like, yeah, Joe's. And I'm like, how many pizza shops in that small downtown Maine area are there? He's like, there's about 4 others. And I was saying to him, well, what if Pete's, and I didn't know if it was named Pete's, I'm like, what if Pete's had, a deal where it was a free slice, in the beginning of this innovation where people are checking in, that's an opportunity to I think there's going to be some really intense local battles won, much like social media I think is impacting mayors' political races more than the presidential races. I think it's going to be very fascinating that local businesses are going to be battling on these incentivized point of purchase incentives based on mobile, and I'm just completely fascinated by it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Now, what do you guys think about Instagram? I mean, that's been making a lot of noise in our world.
Yeah, we use it a lot. I use it a lot. I follow you on Instagram.
Are you a fan?
Oh, yeah.
I'm a fan of Instagram, but I think its effect will end up being limited. I think it's got a.
We're in a different boat, Gary, because we see these things come and go over a period of a couple of decades now, and it's hard to immediately gravitated towards Instagram. Amber and I interviewed them right away. We really thought there's something they're doing, and it's interesting because they're doing something right. Hard to pinpoint what,
right?
But they're doing something right. And
photos are a beast of an industry, I mean, people are just obsessed with it.
Oh yeah, there's now Path, and there was what's the other one that you
Pick Please, but Path I think is going to be a flop because I don't understand limiting it to 50 people. I don't get it. Now Kevin Rose told me. He said, wait till you see all the other features because they've got a lot that they couldn't launch with. It's going to be better. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of going in the other direction when everybody's going in one direction.
Yeah.
So the restrictions of Path actually speak to me. I think restrictions are an amazing I've been playing around with this startup idea that looked a lot like a Twitter or a Pounce where you could only literally tweet once a day. That was it. And I was wondering how powerful that would mean. Imagine saying, happy birthday at Leo, and that was the only thing I could say for 24 hours. Think about the context of what that communication would mean. I'm very bullish on restrictions. I think that's the next wave. I think the next killer thing that everybody went crazy about that had an insane evaluation would probably be in the restriction market. So I think Path, Leo, I very much understand what you're saying, but I can tell you from my filter, it may not win, but I think something in that genre has a shot to be very effective going forward.
Well, Twitter is an example of restrictions. They restricted you to 140 characters, not necessarily on purpose, but it worked. So some restrictions can work where others don't. I don't know if restricting friends is one of those restrictions or not. It may be.
I think it's a fascinating thing. I'll tell you what. Going into 2011, I'm completely excited. I mean, I'm completely blown away by what virtual currency means. I mean, the amount of products 7-Eleven sold because people wanted to get their Zynga points in the products
it's amazing,
was staggering.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And to me, that's something people are not talking about enough. When you look at something like what Cyworld does in revenue in South Korea because you get a room and you want to buy stuff for your room. As our lives go more and more into these computers that we're all looking into right now, we're going to want to express ourselves. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. Culture is, that's in our DNA as human beings. We want to express ourselves. It's why we wear logoed products. It's why we do the things we do. It's the watches we wear. And I think it's the stickers we put on our laptop. We want to express ourselves. And I think there's a lot of innovation to come on badges and gaming mechanics, but I find them fascinating when they make us start doing things in the real world. When we start running marathons to get a badge to show our friends.
You must like Get Glue then.
Yes, I think I feel like I haven't dug into it enough. I know it from afar because I think we did something with Crush It with them. But yes, I mean, I think Get Glue is on to something there. I've got to look deeper.
It's all about stickers. It's all about stickers. Collecting stickers.
I think there's something there, and I think virtual currency.
I saw Jane McGonigal talk at Food Camp, and one of the things she said is the same contrarian idea. She said we're going to have a reaction to all this public, and the next big thing is secrets.
Yeah,
telling secrets, sharing secrets.
Yeah,
isn't that interesting?
I can see. It makes sense. I mean, it's kind of how we roll, right? What goes up goes down. As a matter of fact, my entire thesis for the Thank You economy is we've just lived through the big box era, right? The golden era of Walmart, Costco, BJ's. And so I think we're going back to small town
broadcast networks. Yeah.
We've lived through the screw you economy.
We've had big boxes in lots of areas.
Yeah,
that's right.
Time for the Thank You economy.
Hey, guys, listen, my grandma's going to go to sleep soon. I want to spend a little more time with her. I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm sorry I'm running off, but I know we
were about to get rid of you about 5 minutes ago. You kept us going. Gary Vaynerchuk at winelibrary.com, GaryVaynerchuk.com. Crush It's the current book. When's the new book, The Thank You Economy? When's that come out, Gary?
Comes out in March, and what would make me really happy, because again I got a lot of energy and you guys got me pumped, so I'll stay up late tonight.
Come back March.
Well, that for sure. And if people who are watching want to stop by facebook.com/Gary, Gary, and say, hey, I'd like to meet more people. It's how I roll.
Facebook.com/Gary. Is that really where you think Facebook's going to be the place to be for people like you?
Listen, you can't deny what it is. How about this,
You did
Leo?
a nice job on this. This looks great.
Thanks, man. I don't really necessarily think anything is the place to be. I think the place to be is where the people are, right? So I think it's the job of people that want to be with people to find them where they are. And so for me, whether that's Facebook or Twitter, if it used to be AOL, physically, if it's at South by Southwest, that's kind of where I want to be.
Cool. Well, we'll see you in France at Le Web, and in spring at South by Southwest. Can't wait to see you then again.
Guys, thanks for having me on. Stay well.
Thanks, Gary. Cheers.
Great talking to you, Gary.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Lots of places to find Gary Vaynerchuk. I like that Facebook. I think that, boy, it makes me want to do a better job with my Facebook page. Look at how nice that is with the drawing and all that stuff. Facebook.com/Gary.
Well done getting Gary, too.
Yeah. Let me just like that. Let me like that page.
Oh, yeah. I always forget to like things.
You got to like it. That's it for tonight. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week, actually in 2 weeks, for... Should we call it Triangulation?
Let's call it Triangulation.
For Triangulation. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
So there you go. I love talking to Gary. Even seeing the rerun of talking to him back in November gets me excited. Thanks for joining us on Triangulation. Leo will be back next week, and we'll be sitting down with Jeff Jarvis on episode 28. And, of course, our preempted episode, if you were watching live with Kevin Marks, is still being rescheduled. We'll have him back on again as well. See you next time.